Hey guys, GhazzyTV here with another Diablo 4 video. In this one, I'm going to talk a little bit about my feedback and thoughts around the Diablo 4 server slam and the betas we've been playing leading into the launch. Before we dive into it, I do want to point out that I am one of the guide creators in Path of Exile, making tons of build guides, mainly focusing on summoner builds and other builds as well, and also some mechanics. In Diablo 4, I will be creating build guides exclusively on the Necromancer class to start with, and they will all be posted on the Icy Veins website for Diablo 4. The link to this will be found in the descriptions below. You guys will enjoy that. I'm actually very excited for Diablo 4, despite the incoming negative feedback I have in this video. So do take this a little bit with a grain of salt. I am a very frustrated with some of the decisions they've made, but then again, my frustration comes from a point or from a source of passion, if you will, because I do actually care as I'm having a lot of fun with this, and I wish this game actually does very well. So hopefully some of this will be remedied before the launch. Let's just dive into it. So a minor note is actually to point out a good thing, which is actually the immersion of the game. And this is something I'm going to revert back to quite a lot and talk about the immersion itself of the actual gameplay, which is the main focus of games in general. And that is the actual music. I noticed this, and I know chat noticed this during the streams, that the Ashava boss fights OST was absolutely amazing. I know that the music around the other areas of the game were more ambient voices, noises, and stuff like that, and I'm not too big of a fan of that. But I did enjoy the actual boss fight. It actually really felt like I was doing a big boss fight. And I don't know, the OST can do so much, the soundtrack in general can do so much for your enjoyment, and again, immersion in the game. I think they did this really well, and this is something very few people have actually talked about it and touched upon. I know Ciceron did in his video about this, and I think that a lot of the stuff he had in the feedback was really good to point out as well. Do check out his video on this as well. From my personal point of view, though, there's a couple of things I do want to point out, and again, I want to start off with the positive things, such as the loot being much better than ever. Obviously, they did tell us that we were going to be showered with legendary drops and increased drop rates in general during the first couple of beta sessions, but in the server slam, it was supposed to be, or allegedly and assumingly, the same drop rates we're supposed to be expecting in the actual launch, and it felt really good. We did drop a couple of legendaries outside of the cheesy farm strategies in the stronghold, obviously, but in general, we did actually find a couple of legendaries as we were leveling, and it felt like it was a much better sense for us to look at the general stats on our rare items, and actually was getting kind of excited to get an upgrade from a rare item. Whereas in the past, it was kind of whatever, and all we wanted was the legendary items. And I felt like I was having a character progression, and that immersion of my character getting stronger from getting rare items and that legendary getting that huge dopamine kick really felt really very, very good. So I'm very happy with how the loot works right now. Obviously, this is all based around level 20 or 25 in the previous one's cap in basically only one zone of the Act 1. So obviously all of these are subjective to change as we move forward in the game, but as of the things we've actually been able to experience, that was a good thing. So I do want to point that out. A couple of other minor things is compared to a lot of these feedback points that I've made, it will be compared to Path of Exile, as that is my main game. And that is things like the HP or the resource bubbles do not have any option for us to see the numerical value above your bubbles. And this is something I genuinely always appreciate to see. I want to know exactly how much HP I have. I don't want to have a visual display approximately how much life I have. Whether or not that is displayed in a percent base or an exact numerical value, I don't care, as long as I get to see that number. And that is because I'm more of a numbers kind of guy. And I know a lot of people feel the same way. At least give us the option. I don't see why we shouldn't have the option in general, which also brings us back to the point of the map overlay, which is something they decided not to have. Now, I did feel myself being more immersed in the gameplay by not having an overlay map, which is something I've gotten used to from Diablo 1 and 2 when it comes to the overlay map in general being basically founded by Blizzard themselves in this specific genre. However, I think that, again, it seems odd to me that the option to enable that kind of gameplay isn't there, rather than shutting it off completely from the game, from the actual community. It feels a lot like Blizzard is trying to control the narrative in how the game is supposed to be played, rather than giving us the option to play the game the way we want to have the maximum amount of enjoyment out of it. And this is something that we're going to tackle, revert back to quite a lot and tackle this specific topic further down the road, I think, when it comes to feedback and in general notes when it comes to the actual gameplay and the immersion and character progression. I do want to point out when it comes to world tier and 1 and 2, which is the two world tiers we'll be able to experience. I know that some builds or the meta build versions of different characters were able to blast through world tier 2 and getting that extra benefits of the extra gold and extra experience, whereas most other builds were unable to do so and therefore would be better to do it in world tier 1. Now, I don't mind this too much simply because we are in a situation where, again, it's a level 20 or 25 cap and we're only looking at first act. This might change further down the road. However, by not giving us increased loot drop and simply having increased gold or experience, didn't really feel worth the extra time needed to kill enemies, even if you played some of the meta builds. If my meta build didn't have the specific level or enough skill points or enough gear to one-shot a group of enemies I got into, which I could do in a World Tier 1, I would be significantly faster and getting more experience and gold per hour as well as loot by playing World Tier 1. And when it comes to group play, the enemies doesn't scale in damage, they actually do scale in HP, making this an even more pressing factor that if you're playing in a group and you're leveling, which is something I'll be doing and pushing to actually somewhat race on the launch, which is going to be real fun. So do check out the Twitch channel if you want to check that out as a Necromancer, trying to get a high rank to the first level 100s as a Necromancer, if not the first. We're going to do World Tier 1 simply for that fact. It's just much smoother, much faster for us to progress if we were to play in World Tier 1 compared to World Tier 2, as the benefits just isn't enough for us to warrant going World Tier 2. A few other things I want to go back to, which is going to revert back to the immersion, is some really heavy negative things. And I really want to talk about these in depth. And that is to talk about Necromancer, which is the class that I will be specifically focusing on when it comes to Diablo 4. And that was that they had listened to feedback provided by the community during the first couple of betas, that Necromancer minions was just too strong. Now, I agree that they were way too tanky, allowing you to kill monsters or enemy strongholds that were twice your character's level, simply thanks to your minions. Now, obviously, that is not okay. However, they decided to nerf their HP, and I felt like, hey, that seems like a reasonable change. Come Server Slam, and they just felt like paper. They died to everything. And this caused a lot of problems and displayed a huge lack of both communication and information available when it comes to minions in general, or pets as they're called in the Diablo world in the community. Because it felt like they just said, hey, we've listened to your feedback, and cut off a huge percent of their HP, and they just started dying left and right. Like, it was just absolutely disgusting how fast they were dying, and saying this was fine. It felt completely untested to me. And to me, it's very weird to me that a company that is first off charging a significantly higher amount for their game compared to many other games that are AAA companies, making millions upon millions of dollars, and also adopting the rather smart business strategy, which I guess most of us are kind of opposed to, a smart business strategy of selling a higher tier of the game, allowing earlier access to the game, which essentially means that if you pay a little bit extra, you can start the game off when everyone else is. But if you can't afford that or don't want to pay that money, you'll have to start later. And they're calling that you get access earlier, but that's not really what it is. It's a smart business practice. I just don't like it. I'm not sure what's going to happen with the gaming industry when it comes to this specific topic. It's crazy. Good for the companies, really bad for the consumers. Well, they're making millions upon millions of dollars, and it didn't feel like they even bothered testing the minion survivability or the pet survivability, is they could spend 20 minutes and realize that they've overdone it. It just made no sense to me. And this is obviously something that you can just scoff at it and think, oh yeah, but it was only in the beta. But the problem with that is that they have shown the community that this is how they've balanced the game now. What's stopping them from balancing the game in the exact same way further down the road to the end game changes? Will they listen to the feedback of the community and then just overdo nerves by just random numbers instead of actually playtesting and confirming that the change they're doing is a valid and reasonable change that is actually good for the game? This is a very scary topic in my opinion because of what they're showing, how they're handling the situation. And then they made a change to this in the middle of the server slam. They adjusted this and saying, hey, it was tweeted out, and I don't want to throw names under the bus or point that out too much, but I am rather upset with the decision to tweet out and say that balance is a journey, not a destination. Now, I agree that that is the case, and it takes time to tweak things. But that job is not the consumers. That job is in the company that is actually developing the game to playtest these things and give us something that is as close to accurate or as close to balance as possible, and then the players can give feedback on that. Not completely destroy something, making an entire genre of the entire Necromancer build type literally unplayable. I just felt that was absolutely disgusting, and it's very scary moving forward in the game for the during the launch, unless this is somewhat tackled or at least commented upon, which I doubt we'll see. However, this brings us forward to character progression, which is again related to the pets, because I did try these things out during the server slam, and I tried to find a solution to their survivability. The problem with character progression is that it's very crucial for games like this, for the immersion and for your minion pet related stats, because this is completely ruined because of due to lack of information and or communication when it comes to actually understanding what scales your pets. The only hint we have available to us is actually in-game. It tells us that minions inherit 30% of most your stats, and there's a couple of examples such as attack speed and thorns. That's the only information we have available from neither tooltips or anywhere else can you find any other information of what scales your minions. This means that it is literally impossible for a player playing the game, going with minions or pets, with a necromancer or druid for that matter, to be able to tell if X item is better than the Y item. And I know the topic has been going around people saying, well, look at the item power. But the item power is only looking at scaling your armor. Are the minions inheriting your armor? I think so. It would make sense. But that should realistically or logically only scale their defensive stats. But do we know? No, we have no idea. The other stats, the explicit modifiers, is intelligence giving them more damage? We assume they do. That's actually the case. Is it Necromancer's intelligence scales their actual ability damage? Does it scale their defenses? We don't know. Do they have hit chance or anything like that? We have no idea of any other stats that would scale it outside of thorns and attack speed. And we can only assume things. This ruins the character progression and immersion we have in progressing our characters, simply for the sake of that we cannot determine if X or Y item is better. And I think this is a huge problem. And this has been asked to the company several times. I personally sent a PM over to individuals at the company as well that I talked to several times without a response. And I think it's kind of crazy that looking at the Diablo IV Reddit, that people are saying, oh, minion survivability is so bad. Maybe the HP nerf was overdone. Maybe the fix to it was enough, because seemingly the fix to it actually wasn't enough, even from what I've been seeing. But maybe it would have been enough if we knew how to actually gear our characters to accommodate their lack of survival. But without that information, it is impossible for us to gear our characters to fix a problem the character is encountering. Another thing I want to mention before moving away from that specifically is obviously the fact that minions play, they wanted us to have a play style where it was more active, that they were supposed to die, and you had to resummon them every now and then so that you would have to click more buttons. Seemingly assuming that the minion build was a passive build, where you only moved around and cursed. Now, first off, a lot of people actually like that playstyle, coming all the way down from Diablo 2 playstyles. A lot of people like that. I'm not a big fan of that playstyle, but that's not how Diablo 4 minion playstyle actually was. You had to consistently generate corpses because the minion skills that you actually summoned with, the summon skeleton, had a summon priest mechanic. And that only happened by consuming a corpse, again, forcing you to generate a corpse, and then having max amount of minions. That's how you summoned a skeletal priest that would buff your minions to deal extra damage for the next 5 seconds. This would also provide a 10% healing buff to your minions. And after 5 seconds, you would again have to generate a corpse to consume that to buff them again. This was a very effective way to create a more active playstyle, but seemingly Blizzard is looking to make it even more active. So now you're supposed to be able to generate enough corpses to resummon enough minions to every 5 seconds allow you to consume a corpse to buff your minions to then resummon more minions. There is no time for you to generate enough corpses if you're looking to cast any other ability in the entire game. Not only does this obviously provide a lower damage output or lower clear speed and a lower efficiency, and a quality of life is just gone from the build in itself because of these decisions. And it's so weird to me that that's the road that they want to go down to. And I would like them to at least point out these things of what they're actually looking to, because right now it feels like the minion or pet playstyle for Necromancer specifically is kind of a little bit out of the way, that it doesn't really have an identity. It doesn't know where it's going to go, because the only thing you have to do is generate more corpses. and you will still have a build that's slower than anything else. Again, these feedbacks and these notes are based off the experience we've had in the early stage. Maybe their survivability is better later. We don't know because we don't know the stats that scales the minions to begin with. Assuming they get the defensive stats from armor, obviously, or the item power. We have no idea. But if they told us that, maybe this would allow us to, have some sort of weight off our shoulders so we could actually look into the endgame with minion builds in general. So again, I kind of want them to look at better tooltips and or ways to verify if an item is an upgrade or not, and that could be a tremendous amount of help. I think that most other builds I played had an easy way to understand if something was an upgrade or not, for the most part, either in the form of attack speed, critical strike chance, more damage if the enemy is close to you or far away, depending on your playstyle, your abilities. But for minions, this was a huge lack of these stats. We did see stats such as minion life modifiers on rings, for example, or jewelry, barely making an impact in the gameplay, I can tell you that much. So some bigger notes I want to tackle when it comes to Diablo 4 in general leading into the launch is actually that it was very odd to me that the game, which is expected to be aimed at more casual player base, has decided not to focus their efforts in collecting market shares from games like Lost Ark. Because that is the perception I had with Diablo 4 when they promoted it as an MMO ARPG game. They seemingly wanted market shares from games such as Lost Ark being very focused on the MMO aspect, open world. I like the idea of this. I don't mind the idea that they're running with. I don't. It just felt weird to me that they have that approach being so focused on a casual player base to then go out with the information we see with the seasonal approach and being more in a similar to the way Path of Exile is running. This was very odd to me to realize when I saw this, because the way that kind of gameplay is, it's targeting more of a hardcore, interested ARPG player base, such as Path of Exile. Now, I think that the game will definitely be a very successful game and very fun to play, but it was just odd to me due to the fact that it's lacking certain fundamental, crucial information available to cater to the little bit more advanced, maybe not the casual, super casual player base, but the ones that play the game a lot. They want to have the information to understand if X or Y item is better, as an example. So they could actually fix these things and make the game more attractive to that kind of player while still maintaining a very casual, friendly game, whilst having more aspirational endgame content for those no-life gamers, such as myself and many others. I mean, look at Wudiyu just soloing a Shava with a Rogue. I mean, it's just absolutely beautiful. The similarity to Path of Exile is the decision as well to go with a cycling kind of seasonal gameplay, if you will. I personally think this is great, seeing as Path of Exile is my main game, as it would allow me to play Path of Exile on League launches and then play that for the time in leading into a Diablo 4 season launch and play Diablo 4 into the next Path of Exile launch. I think that possibility for the future moving on with my channel could be a great opportunity for me, and I think that could be really good to test out if the game is good enough, but we'll see about that, obviously. Now, with that said, it's just very confusing to me, and it makes me feel that the game has a sort of an identity crisis, as like I mentioned before, the ARPG player base expects a lot of more information. They don't have that, but it is actually something they can actually fix. Outside of these things, I will say this, Diablo 4 or Diablo Blizzard in general has always been great when it comes to cutscenes. The graphics are great. And the general gameplay is absolutely, it feels great. And I'm just very happy with the game in general. It's just these details in the background that I feel are either confusing or scary. And the scary part is the way they're patching and balancing the game. So a bit more open communication, a bit more details will hopefully solve these things, at least from my perspective. If you agree or disagree, do let me know in the comments below, because I want to hear what you guys have to say when it comes to the general feedback of the game. Not about balances, oh, this was too good, or this was broken, or this was overpowered. I don't really care too much about those things because, again, it was only in Act 1. But in general, the decisions the Blizzard has made for the game and the role that they're taking and the future of the game, what do you guys think about it? Let me know in the comments below. I want to hear your guys' thoughts on it. And obviously, like I said before, I will be posting a lot of content. There's a link in the description below leading to Ice Event's Diablo 4 build guides. in the coming weeks, I'll be making sure that before launch, we're going to have Necromancer build guides or templates ready that you can level with and play with. And then obviously we'll be finalizing them when we have more information, such as the Paragon board and all of that as well. That's basically all I have for you with this video. A little bit negative approach or tone to it. But again, I want to say that my frustration and my negative feedback on this is coming from a source of passion, because I do actually wish this game very good success, because I'm having a lot of fun with it. So hopefully we'll see that these things will be attended to, so that we can enjoy this game in a way that I think it was meant to be enjoyed. Anyways, guys, I'll see you guys in the next video. Hit the like button, subscribe for more content, and I'll catch you guys then. Till then, stay safe, keep rocking.